Quick quiz. I don't know if you guys. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. What do the following have in common? First, a calendar, yellow pages, and a video camera. Or this. How about these three? A roadmap, a calculator, and a television. Keep going. An alarm clock, a notebook, and a flashlight. Last one. A camera, a phone, and a computer. Well, here's the answer. I'm glad. I don't know if you guys got it. You probably have it in your head. You're smart. Did you know? Are you serious? It is this. All of these things are found on this device right here. But all these things are on an iPhone. This is what an iPhone is. It's a calendar, yellow pages, video camera, roadmap, calculator, TV, alarm clock, notebook, flashlight, camera, phone, computer. All these things are present in the iPhone. Apple has changed the way. It's changed the world. Apple has changed the way we live our lives. And it changed the way we live, the way we interact, the way we learn, the way we stay in touch, the way we go about our days. Everything we do in the course of our day has been changed by this rectangle. And of course, whatever you think about Apple, and whether you like them as a brand or don't like them as a company, regardless of that, it's true. It's just a fact. There's a story back, Apple was founded by Steve Jobs in 1976, I think. In 1983, there's this famous story of Steve Jobs trying to recruit this one man in particular to serve as the CEO of Apple. This man's name was John Sculley, and John Sculley was the vice president and then the president of PepsiCo. So here is this upstart computer company, Apple Computers, and here is Steve Jobs, and he's trying to convince this man, who's the president of PepsiCo, to become the CEO of this kind of small-ish computer company. And the man was hesitating. John Sculley was hesitating about this whole thing. And he describes the scene as they were sitting on this balcony overlooking Central Park in Manhattan. And Steve Jobs turns to John Sculley and he asks him this one question. He says, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world?" And that question grabbed on to John Sculley, and he realized, that he had a decision. He could hold on to what he knows, or he could do something different. So in 1983, he was hired, and he spent a lot of time, hours actually, listening to Steve Jobs and Bill Gates talk about computers and talk about technology, but above all, talking about what really, really drove them. And what drove them, according to Sculley, he says, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they never talked about money. He said instead, they wanted to do something different. They wanted to do something that made an impact. They wanted to change the world. They called it their big, noble purpose. And they wanted to make tech, they wanted to make computers accessible to everybody, and basically, through that, unleash creativity and unleash people's opportunity and just do something big. As they said, the big, noble purpose. They never talked money, they talked vision. They thought, we want to do something more. And this is the thing for our lives too, is that if we define our lives by something small, our lives stay small. But if we define our lives and shoot for something big, then they actually get to grow. That there's more. And I'm not talking wealth, and I'm not talking becoming famous. I'm not talking becoming an NHL star. I'm not talking about becoming a Broadway star or a TikTok star or a YouTube star, but becoming who you are meant to be. And I wonder how many of us have ever had a Steve Jobs step into our lives and point out that the task you have for your entire life, the task we have for our entire lives, is to become who you were created and redeemed to be. That's the one thing we have to do, to become who you were created and redeemed to be. Because here's the hard truth. The hard truth today is you're not that person yet. The truth is I'm not that person yet. That you and I are not yet who we are supposed to be. Now, of course, you might be on your way. That you might be so far down that road that you have a lot to be proud of, and when it comes to growing that way. And I want to point this out because I know there's some people who are joining us, part of the virtual front pew, people are joining us who might be easily discouraged by this whole thing. They might be easily kind of distracted by this whole thing. And you need to acknowledge that you've been striving, you've been surrendering, you've been praying, and you've been striving after becoming that person that God made you to be. Yes, you have further to go, but you are so far from where you started. Nonetheless, the truth is still, you're made for more. Truth is still, you're not there yet. And the truth is, too often, too many of us are holding on to what's holding us back. One of the reasons why we're not there is because too often, too many of us are holding on to what's holding us back. So we're doing a series. This is our first series of the school year. It's a very short one. It's only 3 weeks long, but it's called Holding On. Because I think that if we really believed that God made us in his image and likeness, if we really believed that God suffered and died for our salvation so that you and I wouldn't be eternally separated from him, I think if we really believed that God had more for our lives, that we could have joy in this life, then maybe we would want that. I think that if we really believe that, then maybe we'd be willing to change some things. Because it is true that I'm not yet that person. And if it is true that I'm not yet that person, then something needs to change. It means that there are parts of you and parts of me that are going to have to be burned away. There are parts of you and parts of me that are going to have to be willingly surrendered. There are parts of you and parts of me that are going to have to be ruthlessly eliminated. You have to ask the question, could it be possible that the biggest obstacle to the life that God made you for is the life you're currently choosing? Could it be possible that the biggest obstacle to the person you were created to be is the person you're currently choosing to be? Could it be possible that the things you and I are holding on to are the things that are holding us back? You know, it's so funny because I think real change, like vision, like Steve Jobs change, big growth, that kind of thing, it never means, well, I'll just start doing such and such, or I'll just add X and that'll be fine. You know, we got a new bishop not too long ago, a couple months ago, and I had a meeting with him and some other priests and some other staff people, and he was casting vision for the diocese, and it was incredible. He was going on about like how we have to rethink how we do ministry in the Diocese of Duluth. And he said we have to rethink how we do parish life, and we have to rethink how we reach out to families and support them. We have to rethink how we do evangelization and discipleship. And he said we have to rethink how we do priestly life and how the priests' living situations. We said we have to rethink all these things. And then he said, we have this massive opportunity for growth and massive opportunity for change, but we can't just add things. And he made such a clear point about this. He said, this whole thing, this new vision, this moving forward, it can't just be something we add to your plate. We have to ask three questions. So he had the three questions he said we have to ask is, what are we going to start? What are we going to do new? What are we going to start? And he said, obviously we're doing good things as well, so what are we going to sustain? But he said the third question is almost the most important question. And that question is, what are we going to stop? Because unless we actually stop some things, whatever we start is just one more thing. It doesn't actually change anything because we're still holding on to the past. We're still holding on to old ways of doing something. We're still holding on to the thing that got us into the situation in the first place. So before we can even start, before we can even continue to sustain, we have to ask the question, what are we going to stop holding on to? So let's go back to Steve Jobs. So as I said, he was kicked out of Apple 2 years after he hired John Sculley. So in 1985, he was kicked out of Apple. And then Apple kind of tanked, if you know this. And he was hired back on in 1997. And it was a mess. Apple was trying to compete with IBM. They were trying to compete with everybody. And they were failing miserably. As I said, it was a mess. And so during one of these product review sessions, it's another famous story of Steve Jobs, product review sessions going over all the different products they're trying to develop and trying to implement, trying to sell. At one point, he just said, stop, this is crazy. And he walked up to a whiteboard and he took a magic marker, took a dry erase marker, and he wrote on the board a 2x2 grid. And on top, he wrote consumer and pro. And on the side, the two rows, he wrote desktop and portable. And he said, we are only focusing on creating 4 incredible products. A desktop for pros and a desktop for consumers, a portable or laptop for pros and a laptop for consumers. That's all we're doing. We're doing nothing else. He canceled every other product, every other project they had in the pipeline. We have to stop holding on. And that saved the company. In fact, he has a great quote. He says, people think that focus, he said, he was known for his focus, right? That's why he wore the same clothes every day. He was focused. He said, people think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on. I'll say that again because I messed it up. He said, people think that focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on. But that's not what focus means at all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas out there. He said, I'm actually as proud of the things that we haven't done as I am of the things we have done. Because innovation means saying no to 1,000 things. And that's to save a computer company. What about your soul? Honestly, that's to save a computer company. What about saving your soul? The question is, what will I say no to? What do I have to stop holding on to? Because it's true. We can't live the life God made us for while holding on to what he hasn't made us for. You can't live the life God made you for while holding on to what he hasn't made you for. That's where we come to the gospel, finally, at like minute 25. Here we are at the gospel. And what does Jesus say? Some of his most direct and clear words. He says, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. If your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, gouge it, pluck it out. And a lot of times, we know what it is in our life that's causing us to sin. A lot of times, we know exactly what that thing is. And we even know this. I don't want to hold on, but I also don't want to let it go. We know the thing that is causing us to lead away from God. It's killing the joy in our lives. It's killing the Holy Spirit in our lives. And I don't want to hold on to this, but I also don't want to let it go. We can't decide. We might even say that, like, I just can't decide. It's really interesting. If you're ever doing like etymology studies, like the word decide, actually, the etymology of the word decide literally means to cut off. And we can know exactly what it is we need to cut off. We say, I don't know. So years ago, I was acquaintances with a young man. He was in his mid-20s, maybe 26, 27. And his issue, when I knew him at least, was alcohol. Alcohol had ruined his life. Alcohol had, by the time he was 25, 26, alcohol had already ruined his life. He'd been arrested multiple times. He'd been in jail multiple times. Every one of his relationships was either dead or on its way to dying. He had his driver's license revoked. The disease of alcoholism had destroyed so much in his life. And so through other friends and some family members, he was encouraged to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And he went. But talking with him afterwards, he was so resentful. Resentful of the fact that he had to go to AA. In fact, he would see old people at Alcoholics Anonymous, and he would resent them that they got to drink. They didn't have to get sober until they were old. He would look at his friends, people his age, and he'd be resentful because he couldn't drink like they could. He said, I should be able to drink like a normal 26-year-old. He's just resentful. And he was unwilling to let go of the alcohol, this thing that was killing, that had already ruined his life and was on its way to killing him. And it's crazy because from the outside it looks so foolish, but on the inside it feels so difficult. I want to stop holding on, but I can't decide. I can't just make that step and cut it off. Because you can try starting, you can try going to AA, you can try getting a sponsor, you can try doing all the steps without getting rid of the alcohol, and what's going to happen is nothing. Because you can't start unless you're willing to stop holding on. And that's the truth of this young man is he's no different than me. He's no different than any of us. There's so many of us, we have no joy in our lives, or just glimpses of joy. And the person we could be does not yet exist. Not because we're not willing to add prayer, not because we're not willing to go to Mass, not because we're not willing to serve other people, but because we're still holding on. We're not willing to stop. For this friend, it was alcohol. But you realize this, sin is even worse. Hell is even worse. The truth of the matter, right? We only get one pass at this life. We only get one life, and I know, like, when I bring up hell, like all the arguments, the objections, people say, like, well, what about people who need more time? What about people who never heard of Jesus? What about this and that? Like, I get it. Those are all real questions, and they deserve real answers. But that's not the question for right now. The question for right now is, what about you? In your life? What about me in my life? Because Jesus makes it so clear in the gospel today. He makes it so clear. Hell is real. Hell is very real. And there's a definite possibility of going there. And he says, if anything causes you to sin, if anything takes you away from me and leads you to that place, you have to be ruthless with that thing. The hand, the eye, the foot, if those things cause you to sin, they have to be eliminated. And of course, obviously, Jesus is speaking hyperbolically here. He's not actually encouraging us to maim ourselves or to amputate ourselves. But what Jesus is highlighting is that we have to be absolutely ruthless with anything that causes us to sin. Not the hand, not the eye, not the foot, but what the hand reaches for, what the eye looks at, where the foot leads us. Because if that hand is reaching for hell, if that eye is looking for hell, if that foot is leading us to hell, then it has to be ruthlessly eliminated. Yeah, I know. People hate it when preachers mention hell. I mean, I love it though. You guys, I can't get enough. No, I don't like it either. But here's the deal. You know who mentions hell more than anyone else in the Bible? You know who mentions hell more than anyone else in the Bible is Jesus. You know why? Because he loves you more than anyone else in the world. And hell is the worst thing in the world. That's why Jesus says it's actually better to be crippled, it's better to be blind, it's better to be maimed in this life than to actually go to hell. There's nothing worse. It's the reason why Jesus died. He didn't just die to teach us something. He didn't just die so we could be the best version of ourselves. He died so that we didn't have to go to hell, but we actually could be with him for eternity. That's the whole point of everything we do here. It is serious. And if what I'm reaching for, what I'm looking at, what I'm walking towards is leading me there, then I have to do something about it. I have to stop holding on to that. And this is the last thing. Here's the next step. How do you stop holding on? Two things. One is, I just want to encourage you, be patient with yourself. Because again, if we keep reaching for stuff, our eyes, keep walking to these things with our feet, it's hard to break those habits. So be patient with yourself. It's a process, not an event. It is a marathon, not a sprint. Be patient with yourself. But secondly, be ruthless with your environment. Because we need to be patient with ourselves. That doesn't mean that we're patient with our environment. We need to be ruthless with our environment. If there's anything in our lives that are causing us to sin, we have to absolutely get rid of them. What the hand reaches for, what the eye looks at, where the foot leads us. Think about these things that cause us to sin. Think about anger and comparison and narcissism and lust and distraction. And all of those can probably be summed up pretty easily in this little rectangle. Back to our friends at Apple. They're not the cause of sin, but they've made it really accessible. How many times have we given into anger because something's come across an unfiltered news feed? How many times have we actually said something or tweeted something in anger because something's come across our social media? How many times have people given into this depression and anxiety because of comparison that they find on through this magic rectangle? How many times do people just feed the monster of narcissism and just all about self because that's what they call them, selfies? How often are people led away from their faithfulness to their spouses or their future spouses and have taught their minds and their eyes and their hearts to see other people as objects of lust through this magical rectangle? How many of us have wasted hours, days, years in the distraction that this offers us? It's possible that we need to ruthlessly eliminate the source of a lot of our sin. You might hear Jesus say, it's better to enter heaven with a dumb phone than enter hell with unlimited data and 4G. There's ways to figure this out. There's ways to move forward. There's ways to be patient with yourself and to be ruthless with your environment. One, be patient with yourself whenever you fall, whenever you find yourself reaching for that sin or looking at that sin or walking toward that sin, to be able to say, then I race to confession. That's it. Just race to confession, race back to prayer. But if there is a problem with magic triangle, rectangle, whatever shape this is, whether it's Apple or Nokia or Samsung, it doesn't matter. There's a group called Covenant Eyes. Covenant Eyes is incredible. One of the things that they'll do is they have accountability software on all your devices. You can put it on it costs some money, but it doesn't cost your soul. You put accountability software on all your devices, then you can ask an accountability partner to actually make it so you can't download any new apps that would distract you, that would give you over to anger or to lust or to narcissism or any of those kinds of things. And you actually can start living the life you're made to live when you stop holding on to what you were never made for. You are not yet the person that you were made to be. And I'm not yet the person that I was made to be. But the truth is, we could be. We could be if we would just stop holding on.